You're listening to a special bonus episode of The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
That's right, this show is just for the NBA fans. Because we didn't know who the Jazz were gonna go up against until last night, my 2021 NBA first round preview is coming to you now on Saturday here on the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. I don't think I said that yesterday. That was a bad job by me. But in all seriousness, you know what this is. I'm gonna go through the 8 playoff matchups and tell you what both teams need to do if they want to win. I'll give my picks. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's exactly what I would do on a regular episode of the Jacob Valk Show. I just couldn't do it on a regular episode because, like I said, we didn't know until late last night that the Grizzlies would be going up against the Jazz. So let's start with the Eastern Conference. And I'll start with the 1-8 matchup. The Philadelphia 76ers are going to go up against the Washington Wizards. If the 76ers are going to win this series and have any success in the playoffs, they've got to shoot the lights out. It's what's held them back in the Embiid and Simmons era. There's a reason that they haven't made the Eastern Conference Finals since Larry Brown and Allen Iverson did it in 2001. And Iverson provided the iconic moment with stepping over Tyronn Lue. They've had some good opportunities with Embiid and Simmons. They just didn't have the shooting to get it done. Now they do. Daryl Morey made a concerted effort to add shooters, and it's paid off. You can make the argument that Seth Curry and Danny Green are the most important 76ers. Not based on what they do in the box score. Just based on the geometry of the court. They provide a lot of spacing. They open up lanes for Embiid and Simmons. Embiid can dominate on the interior. Simmons can drive to the hoop. They didn't have that last year. They didn't have that the year before. They didn't have that the year before that. But having said that, if that well runs dry, it's going to be tough for the Sixers. If you don't need to respect Curry and Green, it's going to be right back to tough, contested interior shots for Embiid and Simmons. Curry and Green have done exactly what you want them to do. Curry shot 45% from beyond the arc this year. Danny Green shot 40.5% from beyond the arc. They've got to keep that up. Tobias Harris, too, can be a big part of that. Last year, he shot 36.7% from beyond the arc. This year, 39.4%. Harris has gotten more clean looks. You know that Embiid is going to dominate. You know that Simmons is going to do his thing. It's up to the shooters to keep the Wizards' defense honest. As bad as the Wizards' defense is, it's very easy to go up against a team with no three-point shooting. The Sixers aren't that this year. They've got to keep that up in this series. Now, I'm struggling to come up with a way that the Wizards can win this series. Clamp down on D? I don't see it. If Curry and Green go cold, then yeah, that's disastrous for the Sixers, but I don't think that's going to happen. Play through Beal and Westbrook? I mean, I said that twice this week. I mean, it's kind of funny. We talk about how the NBA has changed to a three-point shooting league. This matchup features 2 point guards that can't shoot. Simmons and Westbrook. I think this is going to be another early playoff exit for a Russell Westbrook-led team. It'll be another black mark on his legacy. He's a Hall of Famer, there's no question, but you can't win with him. I just don't see how the Wizards can win this series. In fact, I don't see how they can even take a game. Sixers in 4. Moving on now to Nets Celtics. This is it. This is the moment that we've been waiting for as Brooklyn Nets fans and even NBA fans. Like, if your team isn't in the playoffs, aren't you excited to see what this team can do in the playoffs with the lights on bright? Since July 1st, 2019, Brooklyn Nets fans have counted down the days until the 2021 NBA playoffs were going to be upon us. Here it is. We're finally going to see if this ungodly assemblage of talent can win in the playoffs. I don't want to say that they have an easy matchup against the Celtics, because they don't. The Celtics are a solid team. But let's be honest, compared to teams like the Sixers, the Bucks, or the Knicks, the Celtics are a high school team. I'm expecting the Nets to dominate in this series. They don't need to win all blowout games. In fact, if they don't win a single blowout game, I'm okay with that. But they've got to win this series convincingly. That's the key for the Nets in this series. Getting out to an early lead. I'm not talking about in games. No, I'm talking in the series itself. Be up 1-0. Be up 2-0. Be up 2-1. You don't want to fall behind in this series or be tied. If you are, then you're going to hear a lot of doubters. You're going to have to deal with it before every game. You don't want that distraction. The Nets will tell you that they don't care about it. They shut out the outside noise, blah, blah, blah. That's tough to do when you're asked about it every day. And I promise you, they'll be asked about it every day. How are you trailing in this series? How are you tied in this series? Is it a lack of chemistry? How are you not blowing these guys out? You don't want that. I mean, what's going to be very interesting is seeing how the big three mesh in the playoffs. They've only played 8 games together. They're going to be asked to play anywhere from 16 to 28 games together in the most pressure-packed of environments possible. That's going to be tough. I'll be honest with you. There's a part of me that's concerned about that. I don't think it's going to mean anything in this series. I don't think there's a way that the Nets lose this series, but if the Nets offense looks disjointed, if the Nets defense looks out of sync, yeah, there's going to be that nagging thought in the back of my head. Again, I'm not expecting this team to win 30-point games every night. But I do want convincing victories. I want games where there's never really a doubt that the Nets are going to win. And let me say this. When, not if, when the Nets beat the Celtics in this series, can we, for time immemorial, forget about the Pearson-Garnett trade? If you lose to the team in the playoffs that you got a king's ransom of draft picks from, and before you lost to them, you never made an NBA Finals, that's a really bad look. In fact, I may even go a step further. If the Nets win the NBA Finals, did they win the Pearson-Garnett trade? Think about it. Without that trade, the Nets don't go on the downward spiral that led to Billy King being fired, that led to Sean Marks being hired, that led to him rebuilding with cap room and bringing in Kyrie, bringing in Durant, then trading for Harden. You can make that argument. There are a lot of exciting subplots to this series. I'm going to be locked in every step of the way. I will say this. I would have been more scared of the Celtics if Jaylen Brown was healthy. That's a big loss, and as good as Evan Fournier is, he's not as good as Brown. Jason Tatum's not going to drop 50 against the Nets. He'll have a couple games where he goes off, but the Nets defense is better than the Wizards defense. And Marcus Smart will make life difficult for either Kyrie Irving or James Harden, whoever he's matched up against. But it's not going to be enough. I'll give the Celtics a game. I'll say the Celtics win Game 3. But it'll be a gentleman's sweep. The Nets will beat the Celtics in 5 games. Moving on now to Bucks Heat. If the Bucks are going to win this series, Chris Middleton needs to be 100%. You got to realize something. Middleton was inactive for the Bucks' regular season finale. The smart money is on him suiting up for Game 1. That's actually going to be the first game of these playoffs. But it's fair to wonder how effective he's going to be. And as great as Giannis is, that Bucks offense will lose something if Middleton isn't 100%. Can Jrue Holiday step up? Yes, absolutely he can. I like Jrue Holiday. I like him a lot. But then where are you getting that tertiary scoring from? Brook Lopez? Bobby Portis? Dante DiVincenzo? That doesn't work for me. Middleton needs to be at 100% if the Bucks are going to win this series. Especially with how great this Heat team is defensively. I mean, you've got to realize something. Last year, in the bubble, the Heat destroyed the Bucks in the second round. Beat them in 5 games. Now, how did they do it? What they did was they really clamped down on Giannis. They doubled him. They trapped him in the paint. Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo were absolutely incredible against him. They made other Bucks have to beat them. You've got to realize something. In that series, Giannis attempted the 3rd most field goals out of any Buck. Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez both attempted more than him. The Bucks need to play through Giannis. He's the Greek freak. If you take him out of the game, you've won. This is going to be true for any team that plays the Bucks, but the Heat have shown that they can do it. They've got to force the ball out of Giannis's hands. Chris Middleton needs to beat them. Jrue Holiday needs to beat them. Brook Lopez, Dante DiVincenzo, whoever you want to say, it can't be Giannis. Let the non-super duper stars beat you. Now I'll say this. Victor Oladipo being out changes this series. If Oladipo was healthy, I may have picked the Heat. He just made that Heat defense that much more lethal. Instead, we're getting a very similar Heat team going up against a Bucks team that added Jrue Holiday. The Bucks are a year wiser. They're a year better. I don't see the Heat upsetting the Bucks in back-to-back years. If they do, Mike Budenholzer needs to go. It's just that simple. The Heat will make the Bucks work. But Milwaukee will win in 6 games. Moving on now to Knicks-Hawks. There's no big mystery with this series. We know what both teams need to do. The Knicks need to keep clamping down on D. They were the best defensive team in the NBA. And offensively, they need to play through Julius Randle. That's the Knicks. The Hawks, they need to play through Trae Young. And for the love of God, double Julius Randle. John Collins and Clint Capella can actually make Randle work in the low post. Like, if I was Nate McMillan, I'd want RJ Barrett taking a bunch of shots. I'd want Derrick Rose taking a bunch of shots. I'd want Emmanuel Quickley taking a bunch of shots. Get the ball out of Randle's hands. That's pretty obvious. Instead, I want to talk about the mood that Knicks fans have. Now, I've got 2 big Knicks fan friends who I talk to regularly, Jim and Nick. Nick, you know. Jim, you don't. I have other friends that are Knicks fans, but I don't talk to them regularly. The sense that I'm getting from Jim and Nick is they're kind of pessimistic about this Knicks team. I don't believe that that is the sentiment of most Knicks fans. I think the average Knicks fan is extremely optimistic about their chances. They won 4 out of their last 5, and their last 3 games to clinch the 4 seed to get home court advantage. They know what this team is capable of. I spoke to John Schmelk a while back. He hosts WFAN's New York Knicks podcast entitled The Bank Shot. I told him, as a Nets fan, I don't want my team playing the Knicks. He said, Jacob, I understand. The way this team is playing, they can beat anyone. He's right. He's 100% right. Everything that I said before this season about the Knicks was wrong. I didn't think they'd make the playoffs. I was wrong. I didn't think that Tom Thibodeau was the right coach. I was wrong. I didn't like the Leon Rose hire. I was wrong. I think what's causing Jim and Nick to be so pessimistic about the Knicks is that they're jaded. They have every right to be jaded. You don't need me to go through all the heartbreak that Knicks fans have experienced. Would I love to go through it? Yes, but I'm not going to. So to the jaded Knicks fan, I want to say this. As a Knicks hater, which is what I am, okay? I'm open about that. There are very few teams that I hate more than the Knicks. So take it from me. The Knicks are good this year. They have nowhere to go but up. Like, I'll be really surprised if they don't sign a big free agent. The Knicks need a point guard. They've been linked heavily to Kyle Lowry. I could see it. The Knicks need a small forward. How would you feel about DeMar DeRozan? It's possible. In fact, I'm even going to say this. There is a non-zero chance that the New York Knicks will sign Kawhi Leonard. The Knicks need a small forward. Kawhi instantly becomes the face of a young and exciting team in the biggest media market in the world. Now, those are the same arguments that we've heard Knicks fans bandy about for years. Here's the difference, though. And I've said this for years. Until the Knicks are good, no one's going to want to play for them. The Knicks are good. They're a really good team. I'm telling you, I'd be stunned if the Knicks didn't sign a big free agent. So to the jaded Knicks fan, I want to say this. Look at your team objectively. I know it's hard to forget all the heartbreak that you've endured. Okay? I'm a Jets fan. I'm right there with you. But try to look at it objectively. You've got the best defense in the league. Your best player should win Most Improved Player. You've got a really good young core with guys like R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, and Mitchell Robinson, who I know isn't going to play in this series, but we know how great he is defensively when he's healthy. Nerlens Noel has done a great job taking over for Robinson. That doesn't get talked about enough. A lot of people thought that the Knicks defense would take a hit after Robinson, fractured his foot. He fractured his right foot. The defense has not taken a step back. Nerlens Noel has been fantastic. Give him credit. You've got a young team, an exciting team, and a good team. The Hawks are not going to win this series. This series isn't even going to go 7 games. The Knicks will win this series convincingly. The most I could see this series going is 6 games. But I don't even think it's going to go that long. The New York Knicks will beat the Atlanta Hawks in 5 games. Moving on now to the Western Conference. And obviously I'm going to start with Jazz Grizzlies. Here's an interesting subplot to this series, and I didn't think about this until I saw it on Twitter. Mike Conley spent his first 12 seasons with the Grizzlies. He is one of the best players in their franchise's history. He will now be going up against them in the playoffs and will be tasked with slowing down the current face of their franchise, Ja Morant. What's the saying? Life imitates art? This is the kind of thing that would happen in a Hollywood movie. The Jazz really don't need to change anything if they're going to win this series. They are leaps and bounds better than the Grizzlies. There's a reason that they finished with the best record in the NBA. From the top down, they are just stacked. Their 9-man rotation is lethal. Donovan Mitchell, Jordan Clarkson, Bojan Bogdanovic, Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, Joe Ingles, Royce O'Neal, George Niang, and Derek Favors. I went in order of points per game. That's one of the best 9-man rotations in all of basketball. I really don't see Quinn Snyder changing anything up. He doesn't have to. As for the Grizzlies, as tough as this is going to be, Jaren Jackson Jr. really needs to step up. I know it's hard for someone who's only played 13 games, counting the play-in games, to come in and make a big impact, but Jackson is one of the better players that the Grizzlies have. He was invisible in the play-in tournament. I can make an argument that he's their 4th best player. He hasn't played like it. He was invisible against the Spurs, and he was invisible against the Warriors. He's got to step it up. See, here's how you beat the Jazz. You go small. The Grizzlies can go small. You run a lineup of Morant, Allen, Brooks, Anderson, and Jackson. The Grizzlies have done that this year. The thing is, though, it doesn't work without the small ball center. Jaren Jackson Jr. needs to step up if the Grizzlies are going to win this series. I think it is possible that the Grizzlies could pull off the huge upset. I was rooting for this series. I'm glad that we're getting it. I think you're going to see really exciting basketball. But I do think the Jazz are going to win. I think it'll be competitive, though. Let's say Jazz in 6. Moving on now to Suns-Lakers. If the Suns are going to win this series, they need to ride their starters hard. Harder than they've done all year. This Suns bench may be one of the worst benches in basketball. In fact, it's probably the worst bench out of all the playoff teams. Only the Suns starters averaged in double figures this year for them. None of the bench guys. And when I say the starters, I mean Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Jake Crowder, and DeAndre Ayton. Cameron Johnson is solid, but he's nothing special. Same thing with Dario Saric. Same thing with Cameron Payne, Torrey Craig, whoever you want to throw out there. They're solid players, but they're not great. I can think of a million reasons why this can't happen, but realistically, for the Suns to have a chance, Monty Williams needs to play his starters like 35 minutes a game. Because let's be honest, the Lakers bench will kill them. That's the key to this series for the Lakers. Well, on a broader scale, it's getting other contributors than LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Dennis Schroeder's got to step up. He was really bad in the play-in game against the Warriors. Montrezl Harrell needs to step up. I don't know why he only played 9 minutes. That was really weird. Kyle Kuzma needs to step up. I like Kuzma, but sometimes he has games that just make you shake your head. Andre Drummond needs to step up. He had a really bad game against the Warriors. He could be matched up against DeAndre Ayton. That's going to be tough. KCP needs to step up. Alex Caruso needs to step up. Although, granted, he played well against the Warriors. He was the third best Laker against them. The Suns may have the better 3, 4, 5 in terms of if you were to power rank their starting lineups. But once you get to that bench, edge Lakers all day, every day. There's another intangible, though. And there's nothing that the Suns can do about this. It's ultimately going to be the difference maker. The Suns are inexperienced. Devin Booker's never played in the playoffs before. DeAndre Ayton's never played in the playoffs before. Mikal Bridges has never played in the playoffs before. Yes, Chris Paul and Jay Crowder have, but let's be honest, Chris Paul does not have a good playoff career. Jay Crowder played well in the bubble, but that's really about it in terms of great playoff series for Jay Crowder. Meanwhile, the Lakers won the NBA title last year. All their guys have playoff experience. There's no making up for that. The Lakers will beat the Suns in this series. I'm going to say LA in 6. Moving on now to Nuggets Blazers. If the Nuggets are going to win this series, they need guys other than Nikola Jokic and Michael Porter Jr. to step up. Will Barton needs to hit a ton of threes. Aaron Gordon really needs to step his game up. He has not been the difference maker that I thought he'd be when he was traded to the Nuggets. Monte Morris is a good bench scorer, but I'd like him to step his game up a little bit. And Paul Millsap, too, really needs to step his game up. He did not play well in the bubble. Had a decent year this year, but I'm going to be keying in on him. Let's see if he can show up with the lights on bright this year. JaMychal Green, too, needs to be a factor in the interior. Yes, Jokic and Porter will do Joker and MPJ things. That's what they do. But they can't do it by themselves. They need help from their teammates. As for what the Blazers need to do, it's really simple. You don't need me to tell it to you. It's how the Blazers made the Western Conference Finals in 2019. They need to play through Lillard and McCollum. It's just that simple. I know it's not an earth-shattering thing, but I can't make anything up. What am I going to do? Tell Terry Stotts to reinvent the wheel in the playoffs? That's not going to work. Lillard and McCollum need to go off if the Blazers are going to win this series. Now, they've shown that they can do that in the past. And I'll say this, regardless of the backcourt that the Nuggets put out there, Lillard and McCollum will always be exponentially better than their counterparts. Also, I'll say this, Will Barton has a right hamstring strain. He's not expected back until early June. That means that best case scenario, he's coming back in Game 5. That's set to take place on June 1st. Doesn't get much earlier in June than that. Look, the Nuggets are without some key guys. No Barton, no Jamal Murray. Meanwhile, the Blazers have a clean bill of health. I didn't have any upsets in the Eastern Conference. I'm going to make up for it here with another upset. Blazers in 5. The last series to preview is Clippers Mavericks. Kind of a disappointing Clippers team. You expected them to be better than the 4 seed. You wanted them to finish with more than 47 wins, but you know what? That's what happens when Kawhi Leonard and Paul George each miss extended periods of time. I mean, again, I'm not going to break any big news to you here. The Clippers need to play through Kawhi and Paul George. I mean, let's see what George can do in these playoffs. Realize he struggled in the bubble. That seemed to be because of the mental toll that being in the bubble took on him. I respect that. I get that. I'm willing to give him a pass. Because George in the past has been an incredible playoff performer. There's a reason that one of his nicknames is Playoff Pete. Yes, the Clippers need to play through Kawhi and Paul George. Yes, Kawhi Leonard will go off. But it's not a guarantee that George will go off. I think he will. But in Game 1, the second playoff game that we're going to get, he's got to ball out. As for the Mavericks, it's really simple. Go back to the bubble. Last year, the Clippers went up against the Mavericks in the first round. The Mavericks made the Clippers work. The Mavericks lost in 6 games. Why did it go 6 games? Because Luka Doncic went off. Nearly averaged a triple-double in the series at 31 points per game. The Mavericks had a real chance of winning that series. The reason they didn't was that Kristaps Porzingis missed 3 games. He missed games 4, 5, and 6. The Mavericks barely won game 4. The reason they won was that Luka Doncic had a superhuman game and Trey Burke and Tim Hardaway went off for over 20 points each. But game 5, the Mavericks got blown out. They lost by 43 points. And game 6, the Mavericks lost by 14. Kristaps Porzingis needs to stay healthy. Let's look at games 1 through 3. Game 1, with Porzingis playing just under 20 minutes, the Mavericks only lost by 8. Game 2, the Mavericks won. Game 3, same thing, Mavericks lose by 8. Games 1 and 3 could have gone either way. If Porzingis had stayed healthy that whole series, maybe the Mavericks pull off the upset. It's very possible. Kristaps Porzingis needs to stay healthy. He needs to play 30 minutes in all of these games at the bare minimum. If he doesn't, the Mavericks have no shot. Look, I love watching Luka play. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA to watch. But without the mental stress of the bubble, I'll take the duo of Kawhi and George over the duo of Doncic and Porzingis. I think this series will be close. I think it's going to go 7 games. But I think the Clippers are going to win that game 7. Monday's regular episode of the Jacob Valk Show will feature me breaking down all 8 of these series and all 8 of the Stanley Cup playoff series. Monday night, you're going to get a New York Yankees show. There's a lot to talk about. You're going to get those every Monday night for the foreseeable future. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying that Sparky Lyle went from Cy Young to Sayonara in just 1 year.